Well, this place hasn't changed. Although this time I'm not the one in the robe. I get to sit back and watch all this with father and mother. Father sitting there enjoying his mead as he's waiting for the show to start. Mother definitely wishing she could have some. She's currently 2 months along with her next child. I'm sure father feels real good about things though. No restrictions on timeline when he and mother can do things. And of course, mother's getting to the point where her upper half is beginning to fill out a little bit, but the rest of her hasn't actually started to fill out yet. So, yeah, best time for him. I do have to say, those are mother's words, not mine. As I chuckled about this, Scarlett was always sitting there a bit confused when we spoke about things like this, and I told her I would inform her later, let her know how things are operating, but she's a little too young. Pretty sure the ladies at work actually told her, as she never seemed to pester me about it the next day. I held Scarlett on my shoulders so she could see over everybody else. I told her this is actually where she was born, you could say. She had heard about it, yet she had actually never set foot in this place after that day. This is why I was really grateful to get the exception to bring her in. Usually, spectators cannot bring their summons in at all, but one of the entertainers that work at my workplace knows the head of security, coincidentally, and, she had made a bargain to make sure that I got the exception. We watched as each of these 5-year old children hesitantly walked up the stairs, get their instructions, place themselves in the center of the circle while the cleric is saying whatever they're saying. Reach down, touch the stone, and experience magic for the very first time. One of the very first ones that came up surprised the hell out of me and made others nervous with this strange burst of power that came out. I mean, there's always power, but usually not that strong. For a moment, I wanted to laugh as the power burst nearly sent the robe over her head. I mean, I would have collapsed, but the child actually collapsed. It's not too serious, as it happens when the magic resonance is forced a bit too hard, too fast, and it's only natural because, well, patience is needed when you do this. And try getting that from a 5-year old. I'm just grateful that my friends actually listened to me when I told them to relax and just, let it go. The child got to their feet, and we heard this light moo, but it wasn't quite a moo. It was almost like a cry. I know what calves sound like. That wasn't right. From this distance, I thought that another bull calf might have been done. Maybe it was some sort of, I don't know, heifer or something. Instead, I was shocked. It was a female minotaur. A child. Just like Scarlet was, but with slight differences, of course, like the thin tail that was completely covered in fur, the face that was shaped slightly bovine. Everyone was silent as the knights actually moved in. Realizing the Minotaur was female, they backed off a little bit. Not that the fact that the males are going to run off and pull a goblin, but sometimes they thrash a bit, might be a little mean. The kid was amazed and actually started crying in happiness, realizing they were out of the depth. The child immediately started calling for its parents as they tried to lift up this little Minotaur girl. The crowd then slowly began to clap and cheer. Though not on the restricted list due to a technicality, it is still a very powerful summons. So much so that I kind of actually chuckle a little bit when I think how many items that they're going to accidentally break when the resonance kicks in from something so strong. I would be happy for them if it wasn't for the fact that the buyers, the brokers, were swarming them immediately. Though the brokers got the message to back the hell away, when the kid's father pasted one of them right on the floor, and I swear, even at this distance, I saw some teeth fly out. As the next ones went up to the circle, we waited our turn, and eventually it was going to be Jake's turn. We made our way down and sat up almost next to the exit stairs. At least this way we can catch him before he actually leaves. As Jake is called forward, we are actually standing just out of sight. The audience can't see us. Scarlet is holding my hand really tight with anticipation, so tight that I'm amazed that she can actually have this much power. I see Jake finally get up to the stone. He pauses to clear his mind. I smile a bit, thinking, good, good. He did not forget his lessons. There he is, stopped in the middle, places his hands down, relaxes, and the stone activates. A rise of white and gray energy begins to rise from the center. A heavy, deep glow comes in. A burst of light, and there it is. A stone statue. What? Jake opens his eyes and is just shocked. Most are actually confused. It's just a mass of a rock. It's human shaped for sure, but there's no real features. It's plain tubes for arms and legs, like square, almost squarish torso, and a sphere for a head. Everyone's confused, even myself. And a few children see this and laugh and point, because let's face it, children can be mean. In that moment, Jake begins to think that he failed and he begins to tear up, getting ready to cry out loud. I know that look. He believes that he's a disappointment, that he didn't get a good enough summons to support the family. In that moment, my heart breaks for him. And in that moment, a stone arm reaches down and wipes the tear off Jake's face with such tenderness you wouldn't believe it. Jake turns to look at the stone figure, and it's moving. It seems to be looking down at him in almost a concerned manner. That is when one of the knights breaks the tension by walking up to Jake and congratulating him on summoning a golem. Definitely not a prohibited creature, but a creature whose resonance will make him very powerful and will make it easy to be welcome into law enforcement or even the knights. A golem is known to be very, very strong, excessively durable, and follows orders to the letter and without question. I realized that this meant that Jake will have his education covered and his life is now secured with just this one moment in time. As he walks off with the golem in tow, the rest of us walk around and we actually meet him at the base of the stairs. We congratulate Jake profusely and we walk as he asks why the golem looks like, well, that. I smile as his lessons have actually never covered this, so he just wasn't taught. So this is just a straight up question of, hey, I don't know what this is, somebody just tell me. Mother and father start talking and inform him before I can even speak that golems take the form of their summoner's magic. The fact that his resonance hasn't even kicked in yet is the reason why there's just no features. Over time, as Jake grows for about the next 10 years or so, the golem will slowly take shape. A shape that will assist him the absolute most. I did have to crack up a bit when he asked, "Does that mean I get to choose?" Father said, "No, son. It doesn't quite work that way. It has more to do with your heart than your mind." And he said this while pointing. Jake didn't get it, but he is young. He'll get it eventually. We walked him back to his spot, which is tradition, and the summonings all continued. We watched and waited till the end, and there was no demons this time, yet there was that Minotaur, of course, Jake's golem, two centaurs that surprised us, another salamander, which surprised everybody, and even a pair of fairies of all things. Nothing on the prohibited list for sure, but still a very interesting turnout. And as we walked back home, Jake was being carried by his golem like I carry Scarlet. He looked so happy as we walked. I had to just love his innocence in that moment. I don't think I actually was born with mine. Yet there he was, laughing and playing on top of the golem's shoulders and just sitting there, not even realize that his robe is being hiked up a bit and making sure he gets a few additional look-sees because of that. As we are in the restaurant for our celebratory meal, the golem draws a lot of attention, after which it is a bit late returning home, as we spend a lot of time with people stopping us, asking us if they can look, if they can examine, where'd you get it, who did this one, which one summoned, yada, yada, yada. To my surprise, a large group of entertainers from my work actually met us on the street. They congratulate Jake as he still rides on top of the golem's shoulders. There are one or two comments about how he will become as powerful as me, although I really wish they wouldn't say like that because I know younger brothers can, have issues there. How do I know that? Though I did have to stagger a laugh when they actually looked over at him and I could see where their eyes were actually pointing. And they mentioned how he's a big boy for his age. Mother didn't understand because she was kind of looking away at the time, but father also started snickering. Jake, of course, didn't understand, which was actually a very good thing at that point. Yet I did notice that his eyes kept looking down into the ladies' dresses. These ladies usually wear things that are kind of northern exposure, shall we say. Their words actually helped to assure Jake that he will be able to handle everything when it comes to the residents and when that kicks in. The biggest surprise in that entire group was actually Marlene. Well, an entertainer from work. She actually walked up with her daughter, a young girl with the same white robe on, with a tiny little pixie in her hands. Not very powerful at first, but over time, the residents will allow this little girl to attend the Magic Academy with no problems. I introduced her to Jake, and to my surprise, he had the golem kneel down slow so he could actually get off the shoulders and greet her directly. I felt like an asshole not recognizing her at the ceremony, but at least Jake and Scarlet were on friendly terms with her. Once all the visiting was done, we, of course, headed home, and it's been a long day. And with a full belly, everybody was getting tired. I did have trouble sleeping, as this is usually when I do wake up, but it was nice to actually fall asleep when the sun goes down for once. Then again, you try to sleep when all you can think of is, I'm next. The next morning, Scarlett and I went shopping really early. After breakfast, it's time to get ready. I thoroughly scrub, of course, which Scarlett keeps insisting that she wash my back and then I wash her hair. I don't get it, but still, she's still pretty young, so it's not a big deal. After which, I donned that strange red robe they have us. It feels weird to only be wearing this, yet somehow familiar. Scarlett finds it funny that I'm stuck in just this robe, and she tries to sneakily untie the cloth belt that holds it, making everything just kind of drape open. Kids. I end up having to actually smack her hand once before she actually listens, so she doesn't actually do that. Jake is beyond hesitant to go with us and watch my summoning, as he wanted to stay at home and play with his golem, and I couldn't blame him. But father did insist that he go. Before leaving, I noticed something. Something was off about the golem. I'm not sure what it is, but it just looks different. Almost like it's already begun to evolve. But that doesn't happen that quickly. It should take more time, right? Right? When we enter the ceremonial area once again, I would say it was deja vu, but we were just here yesterday. I separate from the family as they're heading to the viewer area. Scarlett and I, we head down to the main floor. She holds my hand tightly as we move our way through this thick crowd. Intermingled with an ocean of red robes, there are summons that are still alive, thankfully. I can see the sadness, however, in some of the kids' eyes, as their summons that they had were lost, mostly simply due to old age. The majority of the first summons are usually small animals that just don't live long. I think about yesterday and realize that Jake's group will not be facing this issue. Well, they will, but not to the degree that mine did. Those with summoned familiars are looking happy and proud of their summons. Though a few are getting up in age, there are exceptions. Scarlet being the largest exception to this rule, as she is still just a child, yet she's not the only one. Roxanne actually had a wide berth around her, as her salamander now is about 8 feet long and wide enough to actually ride on. Not that I want to get on the damn thing. It doesn't move much, but you can actually see its eyes locking onto everyone that gets near Roxanne. I can tell it's protective, a good summon. She must be eating well, as she is actually developing very well. No curves yet, of course, but her face radiates with confidence and charm. Her tiefling horns seem to almost sparkle next to her summons, who every once in a while would just send out just this tiny little flame, usually almost like a flaming booger. I walked over her to just say hi, and it was strange to suddenly see the confidence lady turn into the shy girl I knew just in a matter of moments. The salamander suddenly turned towards us, but seemed to just sit there and wait. That is when Roxanne realized it was me, and she jumped into my arms and thanked me for the advice. She claimed that my advice actually helped her bring her summons forward, which allowed her to become one of the knights in training at such a young age. I complimented her for her work, because that can't be easy, and how much she has changed for the better. I mentioned how she stands taller now, stands proud, and how well it looks on her. And, well, at that point, she turned redder than scarlet. As we spoke, another two that I knew came up to talk with us with our summons. Olaf and Lisa showed up. Olaf himself was almost overshadowed by his Arachne summons, but upon seeing this summons, Scarlet actually let go of my hand and ran over to give her a hug, and even fluttered her wings a bit as she did this. As me and Olaf spoke, I felt bad how I was so much taller than he is now. I mean, I know he's a halfling and all, but still. Thankfully, with a bit of respect, he doesn't take it personally at all. And with that, he mentions how his Arachne summons has actually taken an innate liking to sewing and creating garments and such. In fact, the only thing she likes to wear was from her own silk. When I asked him about his customer base, if it's grown much, he kind of hangs his head just a little bit without answering, and mentions how he's hardly able to get enough support to make sure both of them are fed, even with help from the family. I think for a second and look over at the Arachne still talking with Scarlet, and I can see that she is sitting there wearing kind of a sheer white dress on. I asked politely if I could actually examine the fabric, and this little Arachne girl is almost giddy at the idea of someone taking interest in her silk. When I touch it, I'm amazed at the texture. I even say, it is so soft. That is when I ask about durability, and she grabs a hold of it and actually tries to rip it herself. I watch as she pulls with all her strength. I can see the fabric straining, but it doesn't give at all. So not only soft, but it's tough too. I think to myself. That's when I get back up and turn to Olive and ask, so, can you perform custom orders by any chance? Olaf looks at me weird, almost like I'm gonna have him measure me or something. When he mentioned how he was trying to break into that market, I grinned a little bit. Try not to be creepy, but I'm sure I creeped the hell out of him. That's when I told him about my employer, which made him look at me disgusted for a moment. Yet when I mentioned how there's constant complaint about the quality of garments they have, especially the intimate kind, he suddenly realized what I was talking about. His eyes then lit up, and I told him where to go and who to talk to. He could even mention my name as a reference, and also mentioned how I work nights, so if he shows up during the day, I just won't be there. Though if he desires to come at night, Scarlet can actually look after his summons as well. They already have security. This definitely made him grin. I shook his hand, and for a moment I believe I saw gold coins flashing in his eyes at the idea of how much money he could make. As we were talking, I could hear the unmistakable sound of hooves on stone. Eventually, when I was done with the conversation, I turned to see a not so little Lisa standing right next to that big unicorn, now fully grown. She had finished speaking with Roxanne, and now they stand side by side. That moment Lisa sees me, she also jumps into my arms, dang near knocking me over. She begins to squeeze me very, very tight. And for a moment, I just have to tell myself, don't let her squeeze a fart out. Don't let her squeeze a fart out. She finally lets go when she steps back, and I can see her, her tall form, now looking like the overgrown halfling she is. She backed away even more, realizing that a few people were staring and making snide comments, and then she thanked me again for the advice. She was quick also to show off her mount, a solid white horse with that golden horn sticking right out of its face. Though at the moment, it's actually sniffing Scarlet. Lisa begins to talk about her training to be a sage and how her resonance has actually helped her tremendously. I congratulate her, and I mention how she has actually grown as well. And she turns a little red, and I worry that my own resonance is affecting them somehow, and that could be bad. As we talk, we notice that the boring ceremony is about to start. As we get ready, Scarlet complains about how she won't be able to see. Of course, neither will the Arachne. Lisa is once again standing next to me, so I asked if the girls can actually sit on her unicorn. She's hesitant at first, even though the Arachne just climbs up and the unicorn doesn't even flinch. There's no issues. At first, I think she's being presumptuous, but then she tries to say how Scarlet's a succubus and succubus can't ride unicorns. She tries to place it off as though it's some sort of magic resonance or opposite forces or some such BS like that. That's when I mentioned that Scarlet has just been petting the unicorn with no issue. She mentioned that only a pure maiden can ride a unicorn. This instantly pisses me off, and I say, and you just assume that even one so young is not pure? I said this very loud, which made Lisa shrink just a little bit. I looked down at Scarlet, and her eyes were actually full of fear, worry, and question about what was going on. Without another word, I grabbed a hold of Scarlet, picked her up, and placed her on the unicorn's back. Scarlet had to squirm a little bit to actually get into position, as I didn't tell her actually to lift her leg and actually reach over, and she ended up having to get some help from her Arachne friend to get settled. However, this had more to do with the fact that, at least from my perspective, it looked like a 20-hand tall horse. The unicorn seemed to not even care until Scarlet was fully perched on its back. Then it seemed to pay attention, get very tense on the muscles, and it whinnied just a little bit. Lisa actually began to freak out, but just for a moment, as the golden horn on the head of the unicorn actually began to glow. As it turned out, Scarlet's resonance has just made the unicorn stronger. Unfortunately for Lisa, though, the resonance permeated through her as well. In just a few moments, we all saw her get weak in the knees and then drop down to the floor. Olaf and I actually went to check on her, but the slight noises she made and the shuddering told me everything. I looked at Olaf and said, "Don't concern yourself deeply, my friend. This is just a resonant backlash. She will recover in a short period of time. I've witnessed this prior with others. It shall pass. It will not damage her in the least." He wasn't sure what I was talking about, but true enough, as the ceremony began, Lisa was able to simply stand again, though a little wobbly for maybe a minute. The ceremony is just as boring as before. The long winded speakers highlighting politicians that have no relevance here, awards for high ranking members of academia which aren't even part of this. The standard long winded dog and pony show for all those self righteous personnel that perform this way as a way to remain relevant to the public. Eventually, we get to the actual ceremony and the summoning. Usually, the first summoning at 5 years old leads to cute critters. It's rare to see a powerful one. At age 10, though, most hope for something more practical, something stronger, something that will allow them more power, more opportunities in life. There are your standard hounds, felines, but usually nothing much larger than that. I feel bad for the ones who summoned male goblins, as they didn't even have a chance to feel resonance. Those things are terminated immediately, and there's no second chance to summon. That's the rule. As the summoning started, I was actually surprised to see a few ogres being summoned. Ogres are not the smartest things, but they are definitely strong, at least physically. Thankfully, they're infants and they can be raised to work well for everybody's sake, especially as strong as they're going to get. Ooh boy. A dwarf girl surprised us all. She actually summoned a dwarf infant, basically making her a mother in that moment. A surprisingly high number of fairies were also summoned, and this means a much higher magical resonance and more chance of them getting into the academy. Yet one that surprised me even more was when Sven, an elf, got to the stone. His first summon, an avian, had actually passed away a long time ago, yet he seemed focused, directed, like nothing was going to get in his way. And he was able to summon an egg, a large white egg. It cracked as the knights actually stepped forward and drew their weapons. The shell showed a beak, then it showed a claw, then it showed a wing, and then it burst out, and we all watched in stunned silence. And Sven reached down and picked up his griffin. A baby griffin. The knights immediately holstered their weapons and congratulated him. This is a very powerful summons. It is also extremely rare, and with this, he will be inducted into the knights without question. The crowd cheered loudly as the stone face of Sven was actually breaking into tears of joy. Tears exasperated even more by this little bitty griffin snuggling into his arms as though it was trying to make a nest right there in his shoulder. Later on, when Olaf climbed the stairs, his summon followed. The summon couldn't join him in the circle, of course, but she could be there to help him out once it's over. As he performed his summoning, the light flashed really hard. As bright as it was, everyone was expecting something strange. We looked, and it was another arachne. And all arachnes are female, of course. Everyone knows this, but twice? It cried a little bit, cried just like a child, and he picked it up and he held it close as he looked in confusion. The confusion was evident until the first summon walked up and seemed to hug them both with all four arms. The sight of these three together is simply one of those sights that you remember when you want to soften your heart. They truly, in that moment, look like a family. Lisa was up next, and everybody watched, including Scarlet, who is now perched on my shoulders, as the summoning circle lit up when Lisa placed her hands down. The blinding light actually made me stagger a bit. Even Scarlet kind of almost fell off my shoulders as she tried to lean back away from it. And once I was able to open my eyes, all I could see from the circle was a tail. Scarlet had actually wrapped her hands around my eyes as a reflex, and then I reached up, pulled them away, and I saw just the tail. A fluffy tail that seems to be draped over the side, draped off of Lisa's hands as she had already picked this up. What is that? I think to myself. As the unicorn slowly walked forward, Lisa turned and I could see something that looked almost human. human aside from the red bushy tail and those tiny little pointy ears that seem to stick out of the head and seem to flicker just a little bit. That is when I realized what it is. This little foxy lady is a kitsune, another unbelievably powerful summons to be sure. I watched as the redness kicked in and Lisa's eyes turned towards us all, and the cheers that came out as everybody could see the power almost bursting out of her. She almost fell over, and the unicorn actually had to reach out and brace her before she fell back. Most everybody saw her almost fall over with the amount of power for that 10-year-old frame she's got. But I know something else. If you weren't looking close, you would have missed it, and you would not see that her black hair was turning red. Once she got her feet back under her, she walked off, unicorn in tow and the child in her arms. I smiled as I knew that she would become incredibly powerful with such summons. Kitsune and a unicorn? As they walked back around, not only were there escorts around her, but her family was close. Not only did a single look keep the dealers away, but I could feel Scarlet tightening her hands on my hair whenever they got close. So tight that I actually believed she was going to make me go bald at 10 years old. And that's when I felt it too. There was a resonance that seemed to reach us both. I realized what it was doing to me, and I could maintain a lot better than Scarlet could. She squirmed like crazy on my shoulders as this new arrival simply passed by us. I had to break the tension by asking if she required to use the latrine. She denied it, of course, and soon enough came back to herself. Good thing, too, because I didn't want to leave. Roxanne was next. Roxanne Salamander waited very patiently outside the circle as Roxanne walked into the circle. A bit more confident than before, but I could still see the nervousness in her eyes as she walked up. Setting her hands in the circle and letting her power go, a deep white light emanated before turning into a bright blue, the shade of blue that is only found in glaciers or in the eyes of people that seem to be looking into your very soul. The light wrapped around her and then seemed to crystallize before fading away. In the center was another child. This one lacked a tail. It lacked pointed ears. The long, very long black hair seemed to spread all out like 1,000 pieces of silk strands. When she picked it up, I noticed it was a girl? Wait, humans have never been summoned. How is this possible? I thought to myself. Roxanne reaches to pick up the child, and suddenly everybody complains, "Oh, it's so cold. How can it be this cold? It's the middle of summer." Yet, in that moment, as I exhale, I can see my breath. I actually feel Scarlet tightening down on me as she's trying to warm up with my own body heat. It isn't until Roxanne places the child against her chest that the temperature returns to normal. It took a moment to realize this creature may look human, but it is not. It's a Yukiono, a creature that may not be on the prohibited list, but it's definitely labeled as dangerous. Then I chuckled as I realized that if she wasn't part of the Knights before, she sure as hell was now. Now she has fire and ice, a duality that can make her very, very interesting. Seriously, she definitely is going to have pick of the litter now. Remembering that Roxanne is a tiefling after all, now that she has two powerful summons, she can actually have the life that she said she wanted as a child. A life where she would not need to worry about her finances. A life where she can find a man that will never, ever forsake her. A life where her future children can grow up well. I thought to myself, you made it, Roxanne. You don't realize it, but you made it. I said this quietly as she carried her new daughter off the circle, and soon it's going to be my turn. I lowered Scarlet off my shoulders as we walked up, and she was nervous. She definitely didn't want to let go of my hand, but I assured her that it's going to be all right. She stood there, almost shaking, as I walked to the circle. As the cleric went through her chant, I stood firm. I placed my hands on the ground. I took a deep breath. I let it out and released my energy. This was easy as I had already plenty of training for it at work. I used it to aid in maintenance by restoring old pieces and also analyzing them. That's how I knew how to fix them in the first place. I used this to calm the nerves of those who are having issues with the work. I used this to aid with their health, not just by fixing sore muscles. I end up helping to fix bruised and broken bones, but mainly just to fix things like cuts and bruises and things like that. I let the power flow out of me, all of it. I even tapped into my life force as well, adding to this power. As I did, my thoughts went to Scarlet, to my family, to my friends at work. I wanted to help them. I want to protect them. I want. The burst of power went around me was so bright, incredibly bright, yet it was not a pure white light like a holy attribute. It was bright and it was warm. And as it looked, I could see it. It was fire, a pure flame that seemed to surround me from the outside of the circle, a giant wall of flame that reached up to the roof and almost raised up the rafters. Lights around the area began to shatter from the force, and I could see the flame that rises out of the center of the circle. A tiny, tiny flame that was even brighter than the rest, even warmer. A flame that seemed to take shape. It seemed to look at me. It seemed to open up and almost reach out. It was beautiful. Then this flame shot into my chest like a bullet, and I could feel the power that burst out of every pore of my body, power that blew the robe open with such force that was emanating from this body. Then, just as fast as it appeared, the fire all around me was gone. The power, the light, everything was just gone. Scarlet ran to me, and I tried to catch my breath. It felt like I just ran 12 miles at a 5-minute pace. I was just there on the ground trying to breathe with my entire inner torso feeling like it was burning, like it was melting on the inside. I was in so much pain that I couldn't even make noises. Scarlet kept asking me if I was okay, if I was of sound mind and body. I couldn't answer at the time. Eventually, the medical folks actually pulled up to me, pulled me away so they could actually continue the summoning while they checked my health. These medical folks checked me over and over with different types of devices, and I felt the high amount of energy, but I couldn't place it. It seemed like it was everywhere in me at once. They were confused and concerned and kept asking me questions, but it took me a long time to actually catch my breath without just passing out. It was not that I didn't have an answer. It was the fact that I know what would happen if I opened my mouth and spoke. Eventually, I could get to my feet, and one of the staff hastily closing my robe, after, of course, getting a good look for sure. Seriously, I could see you looking down. Much of the robe had been blown away, but enough remained. Scarlet could feel the power in me as I took her hand. I motioned to her to stay silent by placing my finger on her lips. She knew this very well, and eventually we left. The clerics, recorders, knights, healers, they all marked it as what's known as a misfire. This happens when a summons is just too powerful to link with the summoner. In such cases, the summoned creature lets itself know that it's there, but it's unable to be fully summoned, as the resonance is just too much for the summoner's body. Since summoned creatures fall under very strict rules themselves, or else they face repercussions on their end of things, they will simply refuse to be summoned, stop about halfway. And this is very rare, but it does happen. As I climbed down the stairs with Scarlet in tow, my parents run to me and tried to assure me that it's okay. Mother constantly saying, "It's okay, honey, it's okay, honey." Me still trying to get my heart to slow down. I played it off as disappointment and took my place with everybody else on the main floor. As Scarlet and I walked back, I couldn't help but notice that every summoned creature from last time or this one turned and just looked at us. More importantly, looked at me. When I reached my spot, I congratulated the others on their wonderful, great summons. They all looked so proud, so happy, and yet I still had to remind the girls that they have children now. It's going to take a lot more patience, a lot more hands on. As the voice of experience, I told them it's going to be a lot of work. We stayed all the way through the ceremony and we left immediately after. I didn't stay around for too much, and most everybody was giving me sympathetic looks anyway. My parents once again treated me to a large meal, even though the shredded robe I was wearing caught more eyes than a unicorn. Of course, I realized I was feeling a draft back there, so I was like, "Hey, what's going on?" "Oh, hey, no wonder people are looking." As we ate, I didn't really say much. I just realized that I cannot keep this a secret from father and mother. It's not going to be possible. When we get back to our residence, I fully intend on spilling everything out to them. Little did we know on what was waiting for us when we got back to the house. Hello, everybody. This is Syntax. Thank you for joining me today on Chapter 4 of this ongoing series. Now, before I go, I need to say that today's winner is Dona8362. And I also need to send out some big thank yous to the supporters of the channel, and they are Prozac and Pancakes, Sir, SS Demon, MTF Guard, Brian Kemp, Guardian Sage, Douglas Scarborough, Erica Gem, and Julius Boone. Thank you all so much for supporting the channel. Everybody else, I'll see you on the next one. This is Syntext.
Ejecting!